Innsmouth, stranger.
Hi, I'm Rob Whiten from the Innsmouth Book Club. Join me and my fellow guide John Chadwick as we take you on a fortnightly tour of Innsmouth. We visit places such as the Picture House, the library and Innsmouth Museum to discuss all aspects of weird fiction, whether it be book, film, music, TV or art. As well as that, we stop over at the Gilman House to have a chat with a resident guest. That includes authors, artists, musicians, in fact Lovecraftian creatives of all types. You can find our free shows on Patreon, and there you can also sign up as a patron, which brings you bonus content, plus a monthly PDF copy of Innsmouth News, which features articles, author spotlights, all the latest news and reviews, and more. You can find us at patreon.com/InnsmouthBC. We hope to see you soon, because remember, Innsmouth isn't just a place, it's a state of mind.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio. Welcome to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Spooky voice. To my virtual right, as always, is Gretchen Brooks and David Heath in alphabetical order. And I, of course, am DB Spitzer, your editor and producer. Welcome to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Ooh, that spooky music is making me feel spooky. So, Gretchen, Dave, how are we doing this week?
Yes. Yes.
Doing okay.
All right.
Pretty chill for the most part, to be honest.
Well, that's good. That's good. Dave, how are things on the farm this week?
Well, they are busy. We've had 4 baby goats born in the last 12 hours.
Wow.
Whoa.
My goodness, how many do you have right now?
I think that puts us at 15. And I said 4 hours, but that of 12 hours, but it's actually 15 hours because some of them were at 1 o'clock in the morning.
What members of Charlie's Angels or the Ladies of Death Proof or some Star Wars comic I'm not aware of are they named after?
So the last 2 that I got to name because their dad is Paris Intrigue are La Femme Nikita and Leon the Professional.
Nice.
So
and then we had one that was born yesterday is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind.
Okay.
Aw.
All right. Yep.
Because she's the most empathetic character ever written.
Yeah.
Especially the manga. I love the anime, but the manga is like 12 books compared to a 1-2
Oh, and it's beautiful. The manga is incredibly beautiful. It has like this watercolor quality to it. Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. No, that's fun. And I'm feeling like this is totally in Dave's past of like it's going to be this and it's going to be that. It's going to be an action film. It's going to be a feminine character, and then there's also going to be like the guy. And I'm curious, what are you gonna like name characters after Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead?
We'll see. We have more goats. We have a whole lot of things. You're right. We've never named a goat after Zoe Bell.
Yeah, I mean, there's always Barbara.
You know that's true.
Sorry, that was such a bad joke.
Oh,
I built it up for such
my
a
heart
while.
hurts a little.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Exactly.
Ow, stop it.
See, I built up a joke for a while, and the payoff was good, but also it hurt.
Grown.
Yes. So, this week we are talking about YEGG-HA, a Brian Lumley creation, and Brian Lumley is who Gretchen always confuses with.
What? No, I'm the one that confused him last time.
Oh, okay.
Although I do think Brian Lumley did pass away a couple months ago.
Really?
Yeah, he died in January.
Oh.
R.I.P.
Okay.
I thought we just ought to acknowledge that.
Okay. All right. But
I don't know who Brian Lumley is.
Brian Lumley is the British author who pulled up the tentacles of Cthulhu and Smoochster.
So he, among other things, he basically kind of invented Lovecraft Light.
Yeah.
And the story we're talking about where he introduces YEGG-HA is probably the lightest of the Lovecraft Lights.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've talked about him in the past. Like, it's not like I'm ambivalent about him because I don't really know much about him other than like his acting like a punk at the film festival. So
So outside of the mythos, he's most famous for writing Necroscope.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I've heard of Necroscope.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's like the British author with a military background.
Oh,
And he's like he was really fun to chat to, but then like his actions and how he was like, "Oh, look at her, love." I was like, "Yikes!" But I don't want to speak ill of the dead. But I mean,
So what?
I interacted with the guy, and that's what it was like.
Well, that being said, he made the YEGG-HA.
Yeah, he made YEGG-HA, the creature that the night gaunts all suckle.
And the YEGG-HA, well, so yes, and he did basically the Titus Crows. So on the mythos side, he's most famous for the Titus Crow stories.
Correct.
And this appears in a short story called An Item of Supporting Evidence. Now, this is published by August Derleth towards the end of his life.
Yeah.
And I can't figure out if this is a joke on Derleth or Derleth was in on the joke.
Uh-huh.
But they rip and just mock people who are mocking Lovecraft and say it's got to be this way. And so, in fact, even point, Titus Crow writes this story, which is vaguely Lovecraftian, and his guest is just tearing it apart and tearing apart Lovecraft's writing. And I'm not sure. I almost think this was a double joke. That it was getting something past Derleth, but also sort of insulting the people that thought that Lovecraft was beneath him in the 70s.
Uh-huh.
So in the end of the story, Titus Crow has got this visitor named Chandler Davies, who is an artist, and he's just tearing apart Crow for his stories. And then Crow pops open he removes his tea doily, and he basically brings out a skull with a bunch of wire things coming out of it, which Crow uses to hang his hat or his jackets. And Davies has to admit, oh wow, it's true. And I'm Lumley is, and again, not just Lumley is a mixed bag to me.
Yeah.
I like it when his stuff is
coherent,
straightforward, Lovecraftian.
Sure.
Where his more adventure stories, his more, where Titus Crow is traveling across the universe and princesses are falling in love with him and he's getting an artificial robot body.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a John Carter.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I put some of his stories are, some of them are very much Randy Carter, and some of them are very much John Carter.
Look at me, love! I killed it. Now fall in love with me.
I put it more like Flash Gordon.
Oh,
Look at-
okay.
Look at me, love. I killed it. Now fall in love with me. I'm a football star. I'm American.
Yeah. Well, not exactly.
I know that was my fake Flash
Yeah.
Gordon. Idiot then.
Sorry.
That's but so this is of his lighter of his stories,
Sure.
and and you kind of, and the whole thing is him just going on, Davies going on how unbelievable it is, and this, and then at the end, boom, he pops out the skull.
Yeah.
So I really like Lumley when it's dark and creepy, but his lighter stuff, not so as much. And this is his probably the lightest thing I've ever read. Personally, I think it's the lightest thing that I've ever read by him.
I have to say that Lumley, best written, feels like a bad men's adventure magazine from the 60s.
Yeah, and like most people, I tend to like him better in short stories. I like, in general, Stephen King I like better as short stories.
Correct. Yeah,
Both
no.
writers
Me too.
I like better in the short stories. And I'm probably more of a Lumley admirer, if not fan.
Lumley's better in person than he is in book. I mean,
and honestly, I never met him, so I can't.
It's It's like kind of like is it better in film? Is it better in book? It's like, well, no, it's better in person when he's telling his bullshit stories while you're all sitting out in front of the Hollywood theater, like chain smoking, and he's like, yeah, this, that, the other. I mean, I'm doing a little bit more heavier Lumley impersonation, but Lumley was a fun guy to chat to. His antics, unfortunately.
What year was that?
That had to be 2009. No, It was somewhere between 2006 and 2009. It was
before I moved to Oregon.
Yeah, it was back in the days of Andrew Migliori running the festival.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, no. It was back in the day.
And so then this is one of the last things that's going to be published by Derleth. And then as kind of a retcon is then that Lynn Carter will put it in a story that was kind of left over from notes from Lovecraft.
Sure, yeah.
Lynn Carter then puts, and to the best of my knowledge, with the exception of Chaosium, that's the only things that YEGG-HA appear in.
Yeah, that's to my knowledge, yeah.
And then Lynn Carter puts them in, associates YEGG-HA with both Nyarlathotep and the Night Gaunts, who are at war in Lovecraft stories.
I feel like Lynn Carter made the YEGG-HA more Lovecraftian than Lumley did.
Yes.
Would that be a correct assumption?
Oh, Lynn Carter makes everything more like, actually less Lovecraftian, more like Clark Ashton Smithian.
Yeah, and you're right. I'm sorry. It was he retconned it not into a Lovecraft story, into a Clark Ashton Smith story.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that, especially since an item of supporting evidence is so light.
Interesting, because I've just been reading like what I know about Lumley and like each of these writers that have taken on like the Lovecraft mythos. I feel like exponentially it seems that Lynn Carter has more intention of showing it being like the Lovecraft universe versus like going in other directions with it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's a Lovecraft.
I mean, that's just my impression. Even
it's a Lovecraft universe through the lens of Clark Ashton Smith, because he really went hard with like what Clark Ashton Smith wrote and trying to adapt it to Lovecraft. Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, and I am probably, of the major names I've read, less Carter than anyone else I've out there. But I would say yes, probably, though, because he was writing late 60s and 70s with a little bit of Derleth on the top.
Oh, definitely.
Because Derleth, he still, during that time, he still had, if you wanted to publish this stuff, you had to go through Derleth.
Sure, yeah. And I highly recommend, if anyone wants to read any Lynn Carter, Clark Ashton Smith pastiches, check out the Book of Ibon, published by Chaosium. This is not an official sponsor or anything like that, but I know it's in an actual, like, really good collection. Ignore the editor, but yeah.
That said, Chaosium, if you wanted to be an official sponsor, we're not saying no.
But we're not saying yes. I mean, we've got better sponsors.
Oh.
Chaosium can't pay enough for this show. They'd be like, oh, sure, here's 35 cents.
Call me.
Anyway.
Sorry, didn't mean to undercut you there.
Oh, yeah, no. Chaosium can suck a fart. They ruined the mythos in some ways, in my opinion. They like created this like structure and stuff like that. But also in some ways they did keep the mythos going. It's kind of like August Derleth. It's like there's some things I don't like about August Derleth, but I love the fact that August Derleth kept the mythos going. And there's
Chaosium does it in Japan. Like easily, there's more people that play Call of Cthulhu in Japan than there is in the United States.
Yeah. Oh, there's more people who play Call of Cthulhu in Germany and in the UK and everywhere else in the world than they do in America. But oh man, there's stuff that they've like canonized that I'm like, that was just a dumb minor thing. That doesn't need to be a big major thing. That was like. But it's like, if you need monsters, I guess you need monsters. So
there is something un-Lovecraftian with statting the unstatable.
Sure, yeah.
But at the same part, I'm going to say that, 19-year-old David, who had ADD, was really having a hard time trying to pull all these things together.
Sure.
My Call of Cthulhu 3rd edition, being able to look things up, look up the monster, really helped me get into this. So
no, I totally get that. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna go into me and like what my things are, but it was like, I have to say it was like 3rd or 4th edition Call of Cthulhu. I was like, I wish they would fix this and this and this and this. And I made house rules that I never turned them in or anything like that, but it ended up being like pretty close to 5th edition. But I was like pretty proud of that. But yeah, no, just like being able to like see a system and like figure out how to fix it. And I don't know. I think that's like good for DMing and stuff like that. Not good for social conversation like right now. So, YEGG-HA, how do we all feel about Master of the Night Gods?
That one thing, and so YEGG-HA is actually the child of YIBB-TSTLL, who is the mother of the Night Gods.
That's who I was thinking of, YIBB-TSTLL, the one who all the Night Gods suckle on, yeah.
Yeah, so that this is actually, and even Chaosium isn't quite sure on this, and so he's referred to as a very minor grade old one. Chaosium refers to him as a unique entity that there might be more of.
Yeah.
And we really only have him in 2 stories. And I think that the fact that, because it's a copyrighted character.
Yeah.
It's a copyrighted character, not like Cthulhu and the fact that Lynn Carter could use him
Wait a minute. Yeah, no. I just realized who I am thinking about. I was thinking about another character the whole time. This is the
You're
one
thinking
that,
Yip-
like,
YIBB-TSTLL.
yeah,
This is
YIBB-TSTLL.
YIBB-TSTLL is the mother of YEGG-HA.
Yeah,
And then-
no. This is the one that the Romans stuck in a garrison or something like that, right?
Yes, and then that's how Titus Crow gets the skull.
Okay,
And which he uses as a hat rack or a coat rack. Yes.
All right.
So so it is, like I said, it only appears in 2 stories and in Chaosium stuff, and that just shows you how tight a circle it was back then in the 60s.
Oh, sure, definitely. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh man,
even I get confused with Lumley stuff.
Oh yeah, no. I'm like, oh man, with Lumley stuff and Lynn Carter stuff. There's a whole bunch of YIDHRA and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like you could just like as long as you started with the Y and then threw out a bunch of Scrabble tiles, you could come up with a Lumley or a Lynn Carter deity.
Yeah. And so because YEGG-HA is associated with the Night Gods,
yes,
by association is associated with Nodens.
Yeah.
And part of this is, I think, Lynn Carter may be pulling a joke. Then he, in his story, associates them with Nyarlathotep, which is an enemy of Nodens. So
yes,
and I think that might have been Lynn Carter having fun.
Yeah. Now, canonization before canonization is always interesting.
But to best of my knowledge, those are the only 2 stories that this character comes in.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's like when you've read so many stories and so many things start with a Y or an X or a CTH. It's like, oh geez. It's like I've been like, sitting around with writers, and then like, someone's like, Wizard Waitley, wasn't he a deep? Oh man, I'm getting him confused. No, I'm not talking about any specific game designer from Seattle. That sounds like Scott Glancy, but wait a minute, is Gretchen still there?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we may have overwhelmed you, overrode you today. I apologize.
No, it's all right. I'm incredibly unknowledgeable in this particular subject.
Oh no, I feel I am as well.
Especially like gaming. When you get me into the gaming stuff, that's when you're like losing me. I'm all okay. I played a Call of Cthulhu game once. That's all I've done.
Sorry.
And this is a deep cut. This, like I said, this creature only appears in 2 stories.
Yeah. But we've somehow figured out how to talk about it for like half an hour, and not even really talk about it. But yeah, all right. But yeah, that's YEGG-HA. I mean, I really don't know what else to say about YEGG-HA.
He's not as close to Gothwa. Just saying.
Yep. Not a Zoth-OMMOG at all. I think that's got to be our new scale. If it's a Zoth-OMMOG or if it's a YEGG-HA.
There you go.
All right. Well, everyone, we're going to be talking about Post-Apocalyptia with Ken Hite in the middle section of this show. We will have a middle section. And after that, we will be talking about a film that Dave picked. What's it called?
Dark Dungeons.
Ooh, all right. And we'll see after the break. Hey everyone, it's me, DB Spitzer. Just reminding you, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. PGTTCM is what you have to look for. And yeah. Hey, did you know that ANYCUBIC printers are my favorite printers? I've got 3 of them going on in the background right now. Guess what? Can't hear them. Can't hear a goddamn thing about them. And yeah, I've got resin printers and PLA printers, and they are cranking out stuff. You know what I do with that stuff? I sell it online. I've got an Etsy store. Not sharing it with everyone right now. And I've also got markets that I go to and I sell stuff at, and other various events that I sell things at, print things out, use it for block printing, use it for RPGs. I use it for a ton of stuff. It's like whatever your hobbies are, you can figure out how to use a 3D printer. I love 3D printing, and I think it's the future. If it's not the future, it's at least like CBs, where it's going to be cool for a few years, and then every 10 years, it's going to get a retroactive thing where people get excited about it and just becomes a thing that you care about every 10 to 20 years. And get on it now. That's all I got to say.
DB
All right.
skill issue. This is no longer a tech question.
Oh no, we are properly recording. I just was in the totally wrong window.
Oh, interesting.
As always, I get to demonstrate my incompetence to Ken Hite.
It's all right. It's okay, buddy. There's a reason that I don't ask people to watch me do technical stuff.
Sure. Definitely. So Ken, how are you doing these days?
I am doing great. Everything's coming up sunshine-ish and project-ish and everything else, ticking over. So far, no one has caught on to the long-running scam of my arts career, so that's working great.
Cool.
Yeah, everything's pretty good.
Good deal. Likewise as well. So, how's the weather in Chicago these days?
Well, it's spring, which means that it's cloudy and rainy, but it's a different kind of cloudy and rainy than when it's fall, in that every so often we get a clear, beautiful 77-degree day, and then we're punished for liking it. So it's a different vibe, I feel. And then we're going to have maybe 8 or 9 of those days in a row, and then it'll be June, and it'll be intolerably hot. But until then, we live in hope. That's what we do. As I've said before, possibly on this podcast, Chicago's weather is the velvet rope that keeps out the riffraff, like you'd see in a good nightclub.
Portland doesn't have that. We just have rain. If you
just have the rain, you just have the one setting.
If you can deal with the rain, yeah. If you can deal with the one setting of rain and hot and cool, then you can just set up as.
If you have gill slits of any kind, move to Portland. This is the advice.
Well, it's not the advice. It's actually what's happened. I mean,
is it still in that restrictive covenant law that you guys have left over from the 20s?
Oh no, not that one.
Like, just Klansmen and deep ones are the only people allowed to move to Portland. Is that the old law?
That's the old law. No,
that's the old law. Now in the new law, just deep ones. That's it.
Just deep ones. But
that's good.
Anyhow, so yeah.
Anyhow.
Been to any good conventions lately?
I did. I was just this weekend at C2E2, which is a big comics show. Great fun. Saw a couple of people very briefly. It was a brief flying visit because some other of my friends were in town this weekend and I had to do stuff with them. But before that, I was at ShadowCon in Barcelona, run by Shadowlands, which is a role-playing game company. And they had just translated the Dracula dossier by myself and Gareth Hanrahan. And so they brought myself and Gareth and Robin Laws, the creator of the Gumshoe engine, over to Barcelona for a convention. And it was great. They held it in. Oh, it was amazing. They held it in the Palau de Resendes, which is, built on the foundation of a 13th century castle. And it got, modernized and upgraded like you do in the 17th century. So it's pretty amazing as a venue. It was like a small-ish convention for America. I think it's probably a medium-sized convention in Europe, but it was all dedicated super fans of Shadowlands. So it was like 150, 200 people there playing games. we did a big long Q&A in English and then Spanish, or Spanish and then English, depending on which direction it was going. And that was
Cool.
great fun. We got to sign a bunch of autographs. And then they said, you know what? You guys have worked so hard at this convention, parentheses, we did not work there very hard. Why don't you just hang around in Barcelona on our nickel for a while? And so, yeah, we got
Wow.
like 4 or 5 days in Barcelona just to sort of vibe and experience the city and go to the museums and climb the hills and look at the Gaudí and do everything else you do in Barcelona. Stuff ourselves to the, rim on tapas. That was a thing
Yeah,
we
I
did a
was
lot.
going to ask, how
Yeah.
was the food and drink?
Oh, the food was so good. The drink was
Good.
great. I pioneered a decision that I may do at other shows because it worked so well at this one. But it's the home of the Carajillo, which is an espresso shot with a shot of liquor in it.
Uh-huh.
There in Spain. And so I thought I will have a Carajillo at every opportunity. So I think of this week that I was there, I had 9 Carajillos,
Sure.
which is either good or a good start, depending on how you do it.
Yeah.
And in America, usually if you get a Carajillo, it's with Liqueur 43, which was this great liqueur. But they don't always have Liqueur 43. So sometimes you get it with rum, sometimes you get it with brandy, just whatever the bartender feels like dumping into your espresso. So it's a great way to make friends as well. And then also, yes, there was delicious tapas. I had one of the top 3 octopus pulpo de gallego of my life.
Whoa.
We had just some amazing. We had a vegan tapas one time at a sangria bar that had amazing sangrias. So it was quite an experience. Yeah, it was
Nice.
very, very good.
Nice. Well, we are here to talk about the opposite of having a good time.
The opposite of civilization.
The opposite of Barcelona. We are here to talk about Post-Apocalyptia. We are here to talk about post-apocalypse. I mean, it's coming back in. I don't know. And in some circles, it never goes out of fashion. For some people, it's a mainstay of their lifestyle, thinking about the post-apocalypse. But in fiction, it's coming back in fashion, especially because of the Amazon series Fallout. Have you watched that at all, Ken?
No, but I understand it's based on a very popular video game.
Sure.
That I only know internal game industry rumor about Fallout because very early in my career, I said, if someone is as fundamentally slothful as I am, if you want to become a writer, you cannot have video games on your computer. There is already so much stuff on that computer that doesn't want me working, that adding, a dedicated system to prevent me from working seems like gilding the lily a little bit. So I understand Fallout. I know the kids love Fallout, but the fact that they've then taken this and they've turned it into a TV show, you see the screen grabs. Walton Goggins is in it, so I probably will watch it, actually. Walton Goggins being generally wonderful in everything he's in.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. And apparently he has no nose. And I don't know if they've asked how he smells yet, or if they're waiting for the big season-ending sting.
He smells terrible.
He smells terrible. Exactly. Give it away. Spoiler. Thanks.
Anyhow, this didn't come out of nowhere. Fallout didn't create Post-Apocalyptia. Mad Max didn't even create Post-Apocalyptia. Ken
did not.
Where the hell does this stuff come from?
Post-Apocalyptia in English language fiction pretty much begins with Mary Shelley, with her novel The Last Man. Now, there was, before Mary Shelley wrote Last Man, which was in 1826, a decade before that, there'd been a volcanic eruption in Tambora in Java that had blotted out the sun and caused a year without a summer. That was the summer, by the way, that Mary Shelley was in Switzerland with Lord Byron and Dr. Polidori and Claire Clairmont and Percy Shelley, her boyfriend / husband. And they had probably the worst summer vacation ever even before you
Yeah.
get to the fact that Claire Claremont was trying to sleep with everybody.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
they were there in Switzerland, theoretically having the summer vacation. There's no summer, it's miserable. And this volcanic eruption not only caused basically horror fiction as we know it by causing Mary Shelley to say, we should all write horror stories, and only her and Paula Dory following through. But it also led a lot of sort of romantic poets of the time to write about a world without the sun, sort of a darkness,
Mhm.
period. And this, of course, feeds into old, New Testament apocalypses, the Book of Revelation, the end times. Most of your axial age religions have a what happens at the end story, and that's
Sure.
the Ragnarok of the Norse, which we of course only understand through a Christian perspective because only the Christians wrote it down. But we have this sort of notion that the world is coming to an end and then will change into something else. And the traditional Christian way is that it ends in catastrophe and then gets remade as the New Jerusalem. And
Mhm.
the catastrophe, being the sexy, exciting part, does get people sort of thinking about it every now and again. But it shows up in, popular fiction with Mary Shelley and with The Last Man. And that's a plague story, I believe, is
Yeah.
when there's everybody dies off. So it's The Shining, except probably better because it's Mary Shelley. And it really sort of begins that trend in SF and in horror fiction as well.
Okay. All right. After Mary Shelley, where do we go? Like, is there any major contenders before we start going into the 1970s with like, everything's terrible and the government ruined everything? Nixon.
Yeah, before Nixon, we really don't have someone to hang it all on, I guess. There's a lot of sort of Victorian era disaster fiction. They had they were beginning to get a sense of ecological catastrophe. They lived through several famines. They caused several famines. They noticed the geological changes in the Earth's crust. They were trying to argue between catastrophism and evolutionaryism
Mhm.
in natural history. Now, of course, we understand it's kind of a mix of both. But the catastrophists liked to demonstrate what would happen if this happened today. And so you'd have things like After London, which came out in 1885. There
Yeah.
was a bunch of other sort of destruction of London type stories. And again, a lot of this is just this religious sense of hubris is going to lead to destruction, right? You've got an old
Mhm.
Jerusalem that's going to be destroyed in the apocalypse, and then the new Jerusalem will come. And once more, it's got this religious thing. It's feeding into the new science. And then you have people like H.G. Wells who don't so much do post-apocalypse as do way post-apocalypse, sort of dying Earth type stuff with the Time
Sure.
Machine, where the apocalypse is so long ago that we are now in the new Jerusalem and we're in the new future, and the new
Yes.
future seems apocalyptic to the modern people, the contemporary people who go to it, but it's in theory a self-sustaining ecosystem and society. And so it's more like, in many ways, just straight science fiction or planetary romance where you go to another world and you learn how they do things. It's just that world is our future. And of course you see that with Clark Ashton Smith's ZOTH-OMMOG. You see it with Jack
Mhm.
Vance's Dying Earth. But I don't think any of those are truly post-apocalyptic, even though they imply that there has been some kind of an apocalypse, or maybe many apocalypses between now and then. The true post-apocalypse is sort of the crawling through the wreckage, and for that you're looking at things like John Wyndham, right?
Okay.
And you're looking at the Triffids, or you're looking at the Kraken Wakes, and you start seeing this disaster fiction start coming into its own after, obviously, the greatest disaster that mankind has produced yet, World War II.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that, I think, causes a lot of people to think, what if? And again,
Yeah.
Wells in Things to Come was sort of pointing at the war will be the apocalypse, but then he was concerned with what gets built after. A lot of people then come back and just focus in on the apocalypse, and that's where Wyndham with the Triffids, Day of the Triffids, and the Kraken Wakes, and these are alien invasions that are also excuses to do apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic fiction. And
All
then
right.
as we develop a cultural fixation on various apocalypses, nuclear annihilation being the obvious one to begin with, but then there was all manner of ecological apocalypses. We had the Ice Age coming for a while, as the Clash remind us, and now we've got your global warming, and there's the general notion of species die-off, which is, again, following our understanding of what happens in extinction events in the past. So once more, I think paleontology is feeding a lot of this, and we have this sort of what happens next. And sometimes you get the nice part. You get books like After Man, which is like everything will evolve and be cool. And sometimes you have the books like The World Without Man, where it's like New York City is covered in creepers and animals, and there's nothing left, right? That all of our vaunted civilization falls apart in 18 months or whatever.
All right. That's, yeah. Do you think there's any like specific notable RPGs, pen and paper, that really kind of handle post-apocalyptia pretty well?
I think that my favorite one in theory is oh god, 2 seconds.
No problem.
Right. Is Earth Dawn, which is from FASA back in the day.
Yes.
And it was, the notion was that people went into these sort of bunkers to prepare for the apocalypse. The apocalypse happened, and then the bunker people emerge into the new world. And I think Earth Dawn kind of bobbled it a little bit by being set a couple of hundred years after we emerged into the new world, as opposed to being the events of the emergence. But as a strong, I think it's probably the best post-apocalyptic RPG still. Although obviously the OG is Gamma World, which is the TSR after the bomb frenzy with mutant rabbits, and they all have laser vision and they're running around and there's craziness. That's great fun. But there's been a number of them. There's a Chaosium game that I think was called Lords of the Middle Sea that began as a war game and was just, what happens after the Mississippi Basin floods and we have a Bronze Age civilization rebuilding itself. That was a bigger war game level than it was, down to the, individual band level. But at some level, any of these sort of barbarian swords and sorcery stuff set in the future, your Thundar type universes, those are post-apocalyptic as well. And I kind of leaned into that a little bit with Day After Ragnarok, which is almost apocalypse, I guess, that the apocalypse is called off at the last minute, but it's still pretty terrible. And so the world is I sort of have my cake and eat it too, because I can have a post-apocalypse setting in part of the world and a after the apocalypse setting in some of the world, and a still holding on by our fingernails setting wherever I want it to be. So that was sort of my attempt to address the genre and make it fun and cool, just like people who read Revelation and don't care about the last third.
Okay. Is there any post-apocalyptic science fiction media, or I guess movies, or movies or books that you think people should read if they want to write good post-apocalyptia, or just experience good post-apocalyptia?
I mean, I feel like it's really hard to beat Wyndham. I think Wyndham is really your best at depicting both an apocalypse and responses to it. People accuse him of having a cozy apocalypse. It's not that cozy. He's just British. J.G. Ballard's The Drowned World, of course, is another absolute hardcore classic. Depending on your politics, Jerry Purnell and Larry Niven wrote a book called Lucifer's Hammer, which is about a comet impact. And of course, comet impacts have been big forever. I don't know that it's a mandatory, but it's the sort of thing that if you presume that an apocalypse hits everyone equally, you have to sort of play with that. And if it's anything unequal, that inequality is going to pervade throughout the future. You're not going to get that New Jerusalem that maybe is your excuse for doing post-apocalyptia. Obviously, everyone should watch the Mad Max series. It's
Mhm.
again, that really more, we're going to tell barbarian stories.
Yeah.
Max is sort of a Conan figure,
Mhm.
and we're going
Mhm.
to do that with the excuse of post-apocalypse. I love the Mad Max. The first movie is actually sort of pre-apocalypse, right? It's,
Yeah.
apocalypse is happening all around Max. But then as they get into the Road Warrior and after that,
Mhm.
there's not there's not a lot of real grappling with what are the effects of apocalypse. It's just instantly assumed that we all become cool barbarians driving around in our cars somehow.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like, in terms of addressing how societies deform under the apocalypse, you might want to look back at some of those 70s and 60s science fiction novels, because those are the ones that are in that period where science fiction thought, hey, sociology is kind of a science, we should look at that. And so, some of those stories are I think still inform you if you're looking at world building as opposed to just doing drama. And of course, if you're just doing drama, you can do whatever the hell you want. And one of the great post-apocalyptic novels ever, On the Beach, is really just a social drama that is only informed by the fact that the rest of the world got destroyed in a nuclear war. It's not really about the post-apocalypse, except to provide this sort of psychological urge to the characters.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not, what we think of as post-apocalyptia, even though it's really more of the psychological effects of apocalypse than anything in, the Mad Max series is. So it's really,
Sure.
what kind of story are you trying to write, right?
Oh, definitely, definitely. One of my favorite post-apocalyptic stories, if it can be called that. I feel like it's like one of these like post weird kind of pocket post-apocalyptic stories is from Dan Klaus in a story called David Boring. It's about a guy who's like kind of a shitty guy. He gets beat up, he does some shitty stuff, and he ends up going out to the island with his cousins and some people, and some bombs go off, and they just assume the worst, and then the bombs go off for real, and it's just kind of like we're on this like island situated away from everyone. This person killed this person, and like shit's just gone bad.
Yeah, it's sort of the Lord of the Flies, but also a post-apocalypse,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're, the theory being that without the society to have a social contract with, we revert to this sort of Hobbesian state of nature.
Sure.
And who's to say that in the short term that's not true? But obviously, we got out of a state of nature and built societies, so that it's not a forever solution.
Oh
I
yeah.
think from a storytelling perspective.
Hmm.
And then some of them are just, remove a bit of the world and see what happens. And I think Why the Last Man is maybe a great example of that, where it is a post-apocalypse in that, half the world died, but it's not post-apocalypse in the same way that, The Last Man is, the original Last Man, because society is still sort of functioning along, but everyone is driven by knowledge of this apocalypse and trying to fixate on it. And I think Why the Last Man, although, as a serial in comics, it has its ups and downs, but I think
Sure.
the notion of focusing narratively on the apocalypse, it's a really clever way to do it, because the characters are always reminded of the nature of the apocalypse, either by what's missing in their society,
Hmm.
or by the fact that there's this male protagonist running around with his monkey, interfering with their attempts to reestablish a sort of an equilibrium, even if it's not the New Jerusalem, right?
Sure. Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. One final question for you, Ken. What do you think you would be doing in the post-apocalypse if there was like some sort of Mad Max world, some sort of that's the best I can come up with right now, some sort of Mad Max Fallout kind of place. What do you think you would be doing in post-apocalyptic Hyde Park?
In well, Hyde Park, I feel like, is more of a ground zero for most of the apocalypti, but I guess we do own the world's supply of fresh water. So
Sure.
once the freshwater empire of Chicago is established, I feel like, first of all, we have a nuclear power plant, so I'm living here and writing still. But
Yeah.
if society is broken down to sort of Mad Max levels. You know, in my fondest dreams, I'm, you know, the guy with 16,000 books from before the apocalypse, and I'm telling the children, don't forget, we went to space once, and they're all like saying, yeah, whatever, old man. You know, obviously in real life, I've been, you know, a super intelligent ape food or whatever the dominant predator becomes in the post-apocalypse. I don't think that a doughy 58-year-old writer life is what you need to become the new Mad Max necessarily.
Oh yeah. No. It's like I think about like, oh, what would I be in the post-apocalypse? It'd be like, oh, I'd be like this, and then it's like, oh, what would I be like in the zombie apocalypse? I'd be like the doughy 50-year-old guy who gets eaten in the first scene.
I'd be lunch. I'd be lunch for something. I mean,
I'm like
if it's
zombie...
a proper Mad Max apocalypse, I've got enough friends in Oklahoma that I think I could probably get to the Guzzling Empire down there and set myself up as again a sort of a minor advisor, or possibly as the guy who remembers the old times. But again, I don't think that's you know, I think that's a precarious future, is if you're
sure.
Because what always happens with that guy in the movies is they burn his house full of all the old books, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like that. I don't like that.
Yeah, generally in the first act to like show how bad the world is, or in the third act or second act to like inspire the hero to like kick ass in the third act. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm the friend who gets shot in the head in the first act. So
right, because you're funny. You're funny and engaging.
Yeah. I never make it, or it's like I'm the friend who gets killed by the serial killer or whatever because I'm smoking pot or something. So yeah.
Yep, that's I didn't want to get into that, but yes, you are. You are a moral lesson. Your death will be a moral lesson. I think that's
bury your gaze. But yeah. But definitely no. Post-Apocalyptia, definitely a fun topic, but not a fun thing to actually think about, living through a global disaster of some sort.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like they say, adventure fiction is something terrible happening to someone else far away. So
exactly.
Yeah.
An alien invasion sounds great to someone else.
Right. Yeah. I mean, depends on who they're invading, right? I'm holding off. There's places where I would easily, you know, trade whoever's running it for Zeta Reticuli. I just want to know some details. That's all.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're in the middle of the country. I mean, they're going to invade Los Angeles or New York first.
Yeah, and then it's a wait and see, right?
And then it's wait and see. It's like, all right, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago. It's like I'm pretty good. It's like Portland's pretty low on the list of like
low on the alien invasion, unless they just love salmon. If they're alien bears, you're screwed. Yep.
Yeah, salmon, huckleberries, and hazelnuts.
That's right. Keto aliens are your weakness.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna get the fancy aliens.
That's right. They're the hipster aliens. No, we don't really want to invade Chicago. It's kind of, you know, flyover.
Yeah, it's like, oh, San Francisco's so like 90s.
The aliens invade San Francisco and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we already got here. If you've been invaded, they'll find somewhere else.
Anyhow, well, Ken, it's always really awesome to talk to you.
Great to talk to you, man.
Yeah.
I don't know that this was as informative as our usual segments are, but you know, I guess it's the post-apocalypse, right? Knowledge is blown up and scattered all over the land.
Exactly, and someone's gotta keep it. And you know, in the weird post-apocalypse where there's only digital media, this might help someone.
That's the worst post-apocalypse. Now I'm against it. I was okay with it before.
Well,
horrible
you just
world where there's only podcasts.
You got to upload all of your media into podcasts now, Ken. I mean, just to make sure that inevitable future.
I will not do that. I will not. I'll dare the aliens to take me now.
You know, you've got all that.
Paint a
Like,
big "Comics Welcome Here" sign on my roof.
all right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Ken, and we'll talk to you sometime in the near future, hopefully.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me. It's always great to be on.
Hopefully, I'll see you at a convention or festival sometime in the near future.
One can hope and perhaps even predict that I will see you at HPL Film Fest this October.
Definitely, for sure. All right. Well, have yourself a good one, Ken, and we'll talk to you next time.
You too, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you. Oh, that was good.
In Legacy Door, a lurker from space casts a shadow over time.
We opened our eyes upon the human world. We found ourselves lying on an especially yielding bed in a room displaying scattered relics of their shallow past, tied together by more recently produced items meant to blend with the relics. Typical.
A sensitive journalist dreams of unknown lives.
It seems like every time I close my eyes, they get stronger. I can't even say the last time I had a normal sleep, let alone a dreamless one.
An outspoken lawyer defends the suspect in an unspeakable crime.
And that client was Jonathan Strauss, held for the murder of his daughter Abigail and her companion Harrison Reese.
And a stalwart investigator tries to drag it all into the light.
Some of the Reeses and the Strausses have been involved with something that seems to include an obsession with bloodlines and longevity for at least decades.
Legacy Door is a weekly cosmic horror mystery podcast. An ensemble of actors tell a story, also available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. Available now.
Moving on to the next part, just to remind everyone, if you like what you're hearing, like this episode, share it with people, subscribe to the podcast, find us on Facebook. We're under People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. We're on Twitter. I don't really check Twitter, so it's just kind of the automatic feed. If you just want to listen to us on Twitter for some reason, you can find us on any place, any podcatchers that are out there. Of course, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, the YouTube, where this episode will be. And, yeah.
This part of the show doesn't have a theme song. This part of the show doesn't have a theme song yet. Dave and DB and Gretchen go to the movies. Hopefully next week we'll have a real theme song. Yeah.
Hey everyone, we're back. People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. We're talking about Darkest Dungeons, one of my favorite RPG roguelikes to play on the Mac. Wait, what, Dave? It's okay.
You can see my face through the Skype thing without seeing the video.
Yeah, no. I could hear your beard getting rustled.
Yes.
So we're not talking about the RPG roguelike Darkest Dungeons. We're talking about Dark Dungeon?
Yes, we are. Dark Dungeons, plural.
Oh, cool. Well, that sounds like fun. So, Dave, this is your movie. What is this?
So this is a movie that is based on, of all things, a chick track, which are those Tijuana Bibles, those thirds of a comic book cut up that are some proselytizing tools often used by some of the more intense Christians, I'll say.
Sure.
And so I actually went to a panel where J.R. Rawls, who wrote obviously it's based on the writings of Jack Chick, but J.R. Rawls wrote the script.
Yeah.
And what happened is he basically won the lottery. Now, it was a scratch off. He got $1,000. So he goes to Jack Chick and says, hey, I want to make this into a movie. Chick takes his money and gives him the rights. And originally this was a satanic panic era, anti D&D. You're gonna play D&D, and you're gonna get seduced and kill yourself.
Mhm.
And despite the fact that he keeps this is a better adaptation than almost any other print to movie.
Mhm.
It's just tweaked enough that it becomes, I don't want to say a parody, but almost it's a satire of what Chick originally intended.
Sure. Yeah. No,
I was
definitely.
wondering, is this were they supposed to be serious?
So Jack Chick absolutely was.
Okay.
Then when Rawls turns it into the movie, no.
Okay, thank God.
So, and I don't know if you've actually, but it's actually pretty much, I would say, on the only comic book to movie adaptation that is more faithfully visually.
I read the
is the original
I
Sin
had
City.
to.
Is the original Sin City.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Rawls. So Rawls.
Neither of which are good
Rawls
examples.
adds the lesbian subtext to it. Now, but some of it. So the part where, they're talking about how they explain to the Muslims that they really worship a moon god.
Yeah.
That comes from another Jack Trick story.
Yes.
But Rawls puts it in a way where he's poking fun at Jack Trick.
Well, which means she had to read from the Necronomicon, so what other language could it possibly be in other than Arabic?
Yes. So.
Oh my God.
So Cthulhu, that's one reason why, because Cthulhu appears here. And have you guys ever seen the Gamers Darkness Rising?
Yes.
So you notice that the cultist at the beginning is the gaming group from Darkness Rising.
Okay.
It's the same actors. They're from Dead Ophius, I think is the production company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Cthulhu is not in the Jack Chick Trick
I
track.
noticed that.
But so Rawls had, when they were making this, they had a minister on staff to make sure they didn't get too offensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing the minister called him out on was adding Cthulhu. And Rawls went online. They went to the official Jack Chick webpage and brought up an article, not written by him, but endorsed by him, saying that you should not play RPGs because then you will worship Cthulhu, who is a real being.
Yes.
Wow.
And he took it and he showed it to the minister, and the minister said, "I got nothing."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. While watching this again, I noticed again all of the various tropes from multiple D&D memes. My personal is when she says, "I attack the darkness with magic missiles," making reference to dead alewives, aka Dan Harmon and Rob Schraub's "I attack the darkness with magic missiles," like a billion years ago, like before the internet.
And that they are all the cool people are the RPGers.
Oh yeah. All the people
God,
who look like vampires from Blade or RPGers. Yeah.
And then when they were like, "We're going to LARP to level up," I was like, "Oh my Jesus! Please tell me they're not taking this seriously."
Yeah. No.
My
It was a big joke.
young adult child watched this with me and was like howling the entire time.
Oh, good.
I was like, I paid for this. You have to watch this with me.
I love this. And I saw this. The first place I saw this was at Rose City Comic Con when it was released here.
Okay.
And so I did get. I did. In fact, I asked J.R. Rawls about why he put Cthulhu in, and that story about the minister is what he told us.
Gotcha.
So I love this.
Oh, Dave, there's some
Yes, okay.
some
We know,
acting.
Dave. We know you love this.
There's some acting issues, a lot of
Yeah.
it. And what I get that they were, now that I understand that they were trying to parody, it still doesn't make it better. In that respect, because bad acting is bad acting is bad acting. But
Yeah.
if this is a bunch of your buddies putting it together and being silly, it's totally that. I mean, like, I watch a lot of short films for Portland Horror and Lovecraft Film Festival as their judge, as one of their judges, and you see a lot.
And as a viewer of the Cthulhu Film Festival, I see a lot of student films that somehow made it through.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's what the vibe of this is for me. It's like, this has I feel like I would love to, when we talk about do remakes, I would love to see a remake of this done with really good acting, because I think that's what gets lost in this, is that we kind of lose sight of like how we're making fun of the tracks because we're so hyper focused on this acting, like the trying to move the story along and whatnot. I thought it was really cute and really funny, and actually you're so perfectly on the nose when you say that it was exactly like the track, because I totally went back and read the track and I was like, oh my god, even the like the note, the suicide note was exactly the same font as the font on the track. So
exactly.
Good. Like, that sounds hilarious.
It's fun, but also, like, I feel like it could be done better with more than $1,000.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I love the summoning like Cthulhu, and that they basically have to make this girl kill herself so that Cthulhu can be risen, right?
Yes.
So I love how like she's like, all right, and like the camera focuses like straight into her face, and she goes like, Mistress Frost or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it has its like ridiculously charmingly, I see why you love this moments. Like, it's really funny. And when I thought they were taking it seriously, I was like, oh my god, is this supposed to be serious? Because I can't even.
Yeah. Now, Chick did. When Chick wrote this in the 80s,
bless
he was
them.
absolutely serious.
Yeah,
But-
no. I know Jack Chick was serious. I used to collect Chick tracks, and I think I have a box of them around here somewhere. But it was like mostly like drug and alcohol and Dungeons and Dragons
Satanism.
and witchcraft and I thought those were so hilarious, especially the one about drugs. And I remember like being really high with a bunch of people and listing off all the things that you would do because of drugs, and then we're like, oh, is this permission?
Well, like when I was in junior high, because everybody, I mean, let me be real, I've always been a weirdo. I had somebody filled my entire locker with Chick tracks.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they stuffed them through like the vent part. You know how like lockers had those like vents, but yeah, they stuffed like my whole locker full of Chick tracks. So when I opened it, like all these Chick tracks come out, and people were like, "You need to find God," because it's the South.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I forget about that. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I mean, that being said, like, I mean, that aside, it's like going back to this, so good, like so ridiculous. I wish I had gotten this Chick track.
Yeah.
And
sorry, Dave.
The only thing, and this may have changed last 10 years, the only thing that I think that the only official statement that I'm aware of that Jack Chick made on this was that he did acknowledge that he gave him the rights to make the movie. The best of my knowledge. Unless he's made a statement afterwards, that's the only statement he had made.
One thing I have to say is that Dan Klaus, I think for 8-Ball issue 1 or 18, it may have been collected in 18, but been like kind of like a separate thing in issue 1, like attached to it, was a Chick track called Devil Doll about a super Christian girl who ends up falling in with a multicultural couple who play Dungeons and Dragons, and she tells all of her friends, she's like, screw you guys, I'm gonna go have fun, and ends up getting like a pentagram tattooed on her forehead. And it's like throughout it, it's like someone will quote something and then it'll be a asterisk, and then it'll be like Luke 4:17, and then later on there's like a car crash and people going, ah!